The United States and China, the two countries are dominant world powers, locked in a battle, whether it is over the Taiwan Strait or the chips industry. Washington, however, is now facing a made-in-China dilemma, one that is plaguing its military. It started with the F-35, often known as the world's most dominant stealth fighter jet. The F-35 can fly at speeds as high as Mach 1.6. It carries an internal payload of 4 weapons, all without compromising its stealth. But it is not the F-35's firepower that sets it apart. It is the F-35's computing power. They are known as quarterbacks in the sky, or a computer that can fly. So why was the F-35 in the news recently? That is because the Pentagon temporarily stopped the deliveries of the F-35 fighter jet. The reason? A component from China. What exactly was this component? It was an alloy used in magnets, used in the jet's engines. The Lockheed Martin manufactures the F-35 jet. But the turbo machine, where the part was found, is sourced. The Pentagon has raised this as an issue of concern. It says that the part does not pose a security threat. So, while safety is not an issue here, the bigger question is, how did a part from China enter the F-35 jet? U.S. procurement laws prohibit sourcing supplies for military equipment from foreign adversaries. This means that this part violates the federal defense acquisition rules. Now, this is not the first time a Chinese part was found in U.S. fighter jets. They have been discovered in U.S. weaponry before as well. In some F-16 fighter jets, some Boeing B-1B bombers as well. What does that tell you about China? Beijing has infiltrated almost all global supply chains. In fact, it is almost impossible for the United States to avoid Chinese parts. Washington has long depended on Beijing for rare earth elements. This is because of the low cost of its manufacturing. In fact, U.S. reliance on Chinese parts dangerously high. That means it will be difficult for them to build weaponry such as the F-35, relying on just domestic parts. But the problem does not end there. The question is, where would Washington source its parts in a conflict or a crisis? The recent discovery has prompted security concerns. What will the United States do if China blocks access to the parts in a conflict situation? In fact, reports also suggest Washington is using artificial intelligence to increase its scrutiny. This is to check its aircraft parts, electronics, raw materials that are sourced from China. Defense manufacturers have been asked by the Pentagon to reduce dependence on Chinese materials. This is a move that could lead to further production delays. The reason is because Lockheed Martin cannot assemble the F-35 without the turbo machine. For now, it has no other alternative. It continues manufacturing the new F-35s, waiting for a waiver from the Pentagon. Such a waiver is also not unprecedented. In 2014, Pentagon waived off rules to keep the fighter jet program on track. But this time, the situation has changed. U.S.-China relations are at an all-time low. So it is unlikely that the Pentagon will issue a waiver once again. But it is not just Chinese parts in military jets that are plaguing Washington. There is also made-in-China microchips. Microchips that have made their way into sensitive U.S. applications. 90% of the world's circuit boards are printed in Asia, half of them produced in China. In 2017, a U.S. media report suggested that defective Chinese chips found their way into Navy helicopters. This was a flaw that could have stopped them from firing missiles. In 2018, another report suggested how Chinese military officers planted backdoor chips on U.S. motherboards, ones that were used by big U.S. corporates like Apple and Amazon. The report suggested that these backdoor chips would allow China to control these machines, thus giving them access to classified information. So what is the United States doing about this? The United States was once a market leader in the semiconductor industry. In fact, the microchip was invented in the United States in 1959. In 1990, U.S. manufactured 40% of the global supply. Currently, that has dropped to 12%. So Washington is now trying to counter Chinese dominance in the chips market with the Chips and Science Act. This act is by far Washington's biggest push to bolster semiconductor manufacturing in the United States. It includes $52 billion in subsidies for chip manufacturers. This act promotes manufacturers to build fabrication plants in the United States. Leading chip-making nations are also aiming to form alliances. This is to secure their semiconductor supply chain and also stop China from advancement in the critical technology. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.